Peter. Okay. Let's make a start. Welcome everybody to London Vegans. Great pleasure to have you here at our monthly meeting. And for this evening's meeting, we have Sue Joyce, and she's going to tell you all about her work in relation to pigeons, why we should be loving pigeons, her campaigning work in relation to that as well. So without further ado, let me hand over to Sue. And if you have any questions, please either post them in the chat box or wait towards the end, and I'll open up the discussion. We can have you can speak your question if you want to. So over to Sue. Thanks for joining us, Sue. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you so much for inviting me along this evening. It's lovely to see everybody here. So yeah, as Brian said, I'm Sue Joyce. I run the National Pigeon Advocacy Association, and I also run a fundraising organisation called Little Green Pigeon, and I've done that for quite a long time, really. I'll very quickly let you know my background. I worked in veterinary practice for a long time. I actually, many years before I was vegan, so back in the 90s, I worked in large animal practice as well, because you don't know these things to start off with, do you? And then it was while I was doing that, I had an accident, broke my back. So I ended up working at the front of the veterinary hospital that I worked in, got my own clinic at the front, and that was the first time I'd seen birds coming into the practice and just being abandoned, just nobody knowing what to do with them. And that's how my journey with birds began. So I had a bird sanctuary for about 15 years. For the last 6 years, it was predominantly a pigeon sanctuary. And that's kind of how all this advocacy started working. Obviously, I don't work in practice anymore. I dedicate my whole life to this now. And that's why we've got those two associations that I head. I live out in Wales now. The pigeons brought me out here. We located to have more land for the sanctuary. But then it was apparent last year that there aren't too many people speaking out for pigeons, and I seem to have been pushed to the front to do it. So my sanctuary closed, and the pigeons that we had in our sanctuary, all sort of 600 of them, went to different sanctuaries in the UK, and that's what we fund now, along with many other things. So that's who I am. I've been a vegan for quite a long time, vegetarian all my life, and vegan for I think about 15 years now. So it's lovely to be here and see so many other vegans on here. That's fantastic. Thank you. So pigeons. When you think about pigeons, reaction, depending whether you're a vegan or not, I think is probably different, and whether you're a compassionate person, the reaction to the word pigeon can be very different. And unfortunately, most of the words that we get thrown at us are dirty, vermin, rats with wings, diseased, pests. And that's because of the rhetoric that's been used for the last 50 years, really. Pigeons aren't wild birds. They are here because we bred them and we use them for meat and eggs. That's why they're here. So we do have other forms of pigeons in the UK, and we're talking about just the UK here. We do have other forms of pigeons in the UK as well that are wild, and I'll go through those in a minute. But when you think about the pigeons that are in London and that are on the town streets and in the cities in big flocks, those are the words that we tend to get thrown at us, and obviously that's the disgust that's looked at the pigeons. People that love pigeons will say they're cute, they're adorable, they're sad and they're hungry, and that's actually the reality more than anything else. Pigeons don't really carry any other disease more than a dog or a cat would, unless you're sort of out there licking pigeons, which you shouldn't be doing, really. You're not going to catch anything from a pigeon unless you're working in very, very close contact and not looking after sort of hygiene with them. And I certainly never caught anything from pigeons in all the years I worked with them. So if we just talk about quickly, if we go back to a moment ago, I said we do have some wild pigeons in this country as well, and we do help to look after those birds as well. So we've got a couple of different ones. We've got wood pigeons, which I'm sure a lot of you will be aware of. You get those even in sort of towns and cities as well, and we get a lot of them out in the countryside. They are a big grey bird. They've got a beautiful teal band across their neck and a purple band, and then a big white streak across their neck as well. And they make a very distinctive call, and they say, "They're my shoes, Betty." So they sound like this: "They're my shoes, Betty. They're my shoes, Betty. They're my shoes, Betty. Mine." And you'll hear that. Then you'll hear another one further away sing it back to them, and another one sing it back to them. And that's their call, particularly when they're mating in the season. That's the call you'll hear go backwards and forwards. they're one of the biggest birds you're going to see in your garden. Unless you get birds of prey, they're going to be probably the biggest native bird that you get. They eat sort of berries, seeds, clover, certain grasses. They'll eat all sorts. They're doing really well. There's about 120,000 breeding pairs in this country. They're not, not in any danger at all. They are shot. They are shot by farmers because they want to keep them away from their crops. They do like to eat cabbages and brassicas and all those sort of things. So farmers do shoot them quite regularly, but they're also sadly shot regularly for meat still in this country. And certainly in many pubs, you'll still occasionally see squab on the menu, and a squab is a baby pigeon. So people eat pigeons when they're about 7 weeks old, generally, sadly. So those are still eaten. But as a wild bird, they're not in, we'd rather they weren't shot, of course, and we certainly would rather they weren't on any menus, but they're not in any danger as such in this country. We do get them to come into sanctuary, and they do get brought into to rehab as well. They don't do very well. They really don't do very well. They get very, very stressed. For such a great big bird, they're really nervous because they're so wild. I've certainly sadly seen birds, wood pigeons, come into sanctuary and they just have heart attacks. They really suffer. So if you do see wood pigeons, don't be afraid to scoop them up and help them and take them to your local vet or your rehabber. But it's not always good outcomes. So we just need to kind of slow down our driving on country lanes and just try and look after them the best we can. Another little bird that we get in this country is called a collared dove. They came over to this country in 1950, around about that. They got brought over from Europe. They're a European bird. They are much, much smaller. They're a little bit sort of in between the size of, say, a UK blackbird and a pigeon. They are beige in colour, and they've got a little black band with a little white streak around their necks. They are a very loud bird for a little bird, and they tend to be like, cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. You'll hear them. If you have a chimney, that really echoed in here. I'm in my office and it's really echoing. If you've got a chimney in your house, they are one of the birds that if you don't have a cover, or even if you do have a cover, they'll still try and stick their necks and their heads down and sort of scream down the chimney. They love the sound of their own voice. And I've got some friends that have them that are disabled birds, and they live in their house, and they will walk around the house specifically trying to find a vase or a mug that they can scream into, and they really will find the mug and then just whoo down it. They absolutely love making a noise. They're really aggressive little birds. If they were big, we'd all be in trouble because they would rule the world. They're quite aggressive little birds. They're not again, from a wildlife point of view, not too much to worry about. They're doing okay over here. They tend to, you do get them in gardens, but they tend to be more out in the wild, really. And again, they hang around dairy farms as well, eating the grain. But yeah, they're not too much of a cause of concern. We do also have another pigeon that I very much doubt many of you will have seen, called a turtle dove. I'm sure you've heard of them. I've never seen a turtle dove, and that's because they're at risk, basically. They come over, they migrate to this country, and on their migration route they get shot. And they get shot for food, they get shot for sport. A few years ago, it was about 2021, there was a European ban on shooting turtle doves, and we saw their numbers go up in 1 year by 25%. It was absolutely incredible just by not being shot. The migration and the breeding pairs went up by 25%, and then unfortunately in 2022 that ban was lifted, and we can see that they're on the decline again now. They look a little bit like if you imagine the feral pigeons that you see on the streets, but sort of the colours turned round, so they're kind of beige and they've got little black markings on their wings. They're beautiful, beautiful birds. And yeah, we really, really need to, we're trying to work to get that ban brought back because they are in a little bit of danger. The other bird that you're going to see possibly in this country is a stock dove. They look a little bit like a feral pigeon. And you're not really going to, unless you really know what you're looking for, you're not going to know whether you're seeing a stock dove or a feral pigeon. And we'll come to feral pigeons in a moment. They've got black eyes. They're really cute birds. They're really sweet to look at. Again, not in any danger. And the reason they're not in any danger from a wildlife point of view is because people don't realise they're stock doves. They think they're dirty pigeons. So they tend to just sort of, when they're out in the wild, leave them be. And they're pretty agile. They're much smaller than a wood pigeon. So if there's any gunshot like that, they just tend to fly away. So those are the main birds that you see in this country. And as I say, the ones on the towns, they're your feral pigeons. But feral pigeons, as I said earlier, they come from domestic birds, and the only reason they are in this country is because they were bred for meat and eggs. And then they were just abandoned when we found chickens and decided they were better to breed for meat and better to breed for eggs. We just abandoned the pigeons. And the other reason why there are so many on the streets is from the war. So there were about 500,000 pigeons bred, racing pigeons bred during the war, and then just abandoned to the streets after the war. Hundreds and hundreds of them were killed, and thousands and thousands and thousands were just injured, and then were just left to die or were put to sleep after the war. But the rest of them that did survive, unfortunately, were just abandoned to the streets because we don't need them anymore. So why do we need to look after them? So that's why there are so many. So they've added to the list to the amount of pigeons that are on the town streets, and they're all starving. So the reason why they're on the streets, there's two main reasons. The first one is they originated from rock doves. So in Scotland, you still get rock doves now, although they are finding the DNA of feral pigeons in the rock doves, but that's where pigeons originally came from. And there's a thought that thousands and thousands of years ago, rock doves were bred with a jungle fowl, and that's how we got the racing pigeon type birds and the feral pigeons that we used for meat and eggs that we've got today. So that's where they came from. And the reason that's important is their heritage, and so their memory of where to live is actually up in rocks. And we still get them. I live in Pembrokeshire. We get feral pigeons living in the rocks in the coast round here. It's amazing to see them. Now, there's no food for them on the coast round here. So what they're actually doing is living on the coast and then flying inland to the dairy farms and eating the grain. And that's how they're surviving out here, which is really sad. Or they're eating the grain from the feces of the cows, basically. But that's why they sort of ended up here. And the reason why then you hear the thing that they don't make very good nests is because they didn't need to, because they don't nest in trees. They nest on buildings, and that's why you see them on the big tall banks and the shops and all those ledges that we used to build when architecture was beautiful and we had big stone ledges. That's where you will see the pigeons nesting, because it mimics what they're used to in their heritage. So that's kind of where they choose. So it's sheltered. So all they need for a nest then is a couple of twigs, and the only reason they need that is to stop the eggs rolling away. So people say, oh, they're absolutely useless, they're stupid birds, they can't build nests. And what they're not realising is actually they're really intelligent birds, because why work hard to build a huge nest when you can just put one or two twigs and your egg won't roll away? So they're actually doing them a real disservice by that. So feral pigeons, homing pigeons. We've talked about ferals. Let's talk about pigeons in general. So this applies to all of the species that we've just talked about. The first thing to say is that they make very good parents. They have two chicks per clutch, 2 eggs per clutch, and those eggs take 20 days to incubate, and then they only take about 30 days to become adult pigeons. They grow very, very fast. And that's partly because pigeons are incredible parents. They're absolutely incredible. So the first thing to note is that pigeons mate for life when given the opportunity, when they're not being used for races. We'll come to that in a bit. But when given the opportunity, they mate for life. And they do this lovely little dance when they get to know each other, and they flirt with each other for the entirety of their lives as well. It's not like they just get together and then like, oh, whatever, you'll do. They flirt constantly. It's really sweet. You'll see it with your wood pigeons on the fence, all the flapping and all the cooing. And then what you'll also see is a pigeon kiss. Now, a pigeon kiss is beautiful to see. It's also a bit gross, because what they're doing when they kiss is they're putting one beak inside another beak and sucking fluid from each other's crop. And it sounds absolutely disgusting, and it is a little bit gross, but there's a very important reason why they do that. The fluid that they're sucking up from the crop is actually milk. Pigeons are one of the only 3 types of birds in the world that produce milk. Penguins do, and there's a type of flamingo that do it as well. And it's a progesterone-based milk, the same as with mammals. So they have a really strong attachment, a hormone-based attachment, as well as an emotional attachment to their partners and to their babies. So both parents produce milk as well. The males produce milk as well as the females. They will both sit on the eggs. They swap over. They do about 12 hours each. It's done really fairly. They will both go out and get food, and they will both feed their chicks. And that is what this little dance that they're doing is all about when they're kissing before they mate. They're basically sucking crop milk from each other's crops. It's just a bit of a mating ritual, basically. When the eggs hatch, that's how they feed their chicks. So all pigeons don't lap water like a dog would, and they don't, like a garden bird will stick their head into water, and then you'll see the head go up and the water dribble down their throat. That's how
We've lost Sue, I think. Don't know if you can hear me, Sue. You've frozen.
will put their beak into.
Okay. Yeah. You've come back.
Sorry,
okay.
I'm back.
You're back. Okay.
Hey, sorry. The joys of living. We live in a really rural part of Wales. Sorry. So yeah, it's snowing really badly here. So it could well be that. So hopefully, thank you, Brian.
Okay.
Yeah, you probably didn't miss too much. So that's what they're doing basically. That content movement between the beaks is really, really lovely, and that's what makes them really fantastic parents. Is the nutrition is there. So that milk is a mixture of milk that comes from special cells, and it's also a mixture of food that they've taken in, and it all mulches together. So that's why they grow really, really quickly. And unfortunately, that's why we used to use them, and why sometimes people still use them to eat now, is because the babies are produced very, very quickly. So that's ferals, that's wild pigeons. This next bit's fairly horrifying, and it's actually something that even when I go and do talks at vegan festivals, even a lot of vegans don't know about, and that's pigeon racing. Pigeon racing is thought by most people to be an old man's sport, that pigeons are in their gardens, in sheds, that they love them, that they care for them, and that they've maybe got a couple of pigeons and they're having a great time. Now, there is some truth in that. People that raise pigeons on a small scale in their garden do love their birds, but they love their birds in the same way that a meat eater would love a cow. Is they might love to see a cow in a field, but they still are happily exploiting that cow. It's the same with homing pigeons, with racing pigeons. And there's a couple of different ways that they exploit them, and I'm going to go into quite a lot of detail in this. And this is a lot of our association's work, is to try and get this banned. So they breed them because they mate for life. They pair them up, a cock and a hen. They allow them to fall in love, as we've just described. And then what they will do is they will take the male bird away, and they'll put the male bird in a shed just a little bit further along the garden, so they can still see the female bird, but they can't get to them. So that creates the demand. They really want to get back together. The next day they'll put them back together. They'll go through the whole mating ritual again. And then maybe 2 days later, they'll separate them again. They'll put the male bird again in another shed. And they'll do that about 3 times in the week of a race. And then on the 4th time, they'll take one of the birds away. It's not always the cock. They race hens as well. They'll take one of the racing birds away. They stick them in a container, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But the reason that they do all of that is to make that bond really, really strong, because that means that when that bird is taken away, their desire to come home is more, so they will race faster. So what happens then is that bird is taken away. They're put in a crate with about 30 other racing birds. Now, these are birds that they've probably never met before. These will be birds from the local community of pigeon racers. It's quite aggressive. There's quite a lot of fighting going on. It's a very stressful environment. It's not nice at all for these birds. They'll be in that crate they're not allowed to put them in those crates for more than 2 days, but they're generally taken overnight. They take them 300 or 600 miles away, and then they're taken to a liberation site where those birds plus another 20,000 birds are liberated from the lorry. And the liberation means they go up in the air, they fly around to get their bearings, and then they fly home. So we can understand that first bit at the start sounds a bit cruel, but well, what's cruel about letting a pigeon fly home? I mean, that's what they want to do, really, isn't it? Well, it's not, because pigeons are non-migratory birds. They don't fly very far for their own food. And you'll see this if you see them in London or in Coventry or in Aberavon, wherever you are. If there's a flock of pigeons, you'll see that actually the most activity they do is walking, which is why their feet are so bad, because they're walking around to find their food. They don't migrate, and they don't fly very far each day. And certainly when we had birds in our sanctuary, a lot of whom were racing pigeons, ex-racers, they'll go up, they'll have a fly for 20 minutes, and then they won't fly for the rest of the day. They don't want to expend that energy, and they don't want to fly very far. Even the racing pigeons, which are a bit bigger than the other birds because they've been bred specifically for that. They're really not that bothered about flying. So we're asking a bird that doesn't migrate, that doesn't have to fly for its own food every day, and she doesn't have to look for anything else because she's used to living in a shed with all her friends and family. We've taken her away and released her, and we're asking her to come home. So what's going to happen? If there's a bit of wind, she's going to get blown off course. Now, we don't completely know how pigeons find their way home. They think it's to do with the magnetic pull, and there is some thought. I've seen a few papers being published recently. There's some thought that if with climate change, maybe the Earth's magnetic field is changing slightly, and that's why we're getting more and more lost racing pigeons. But this is all anecdotal. We don't really know why, but we know that they have a very good sense of direction to come home. And we also know that if they are used to racing, like some of them do race for a couple of years, they'll actually follow roads. They can actually follow our road network. And there's then some confusion when a new bridge is built. They don't know what they're looking at. So they're highly intelligent animals, and that's what we're using. That's what we're preying on when we're asking them to fly home in these races. So we just mentioned that there was wind, they can get blown off course. There are predators. These are domestic animals. They will have never seen a red kite or a buzzard or a peregrine. They won't know what that is. So as soon as that bird of prey clocks them, they're going to go. The birds of prey are really clever, and they get used to all these racing pigeons, and they know they're slower, and they're going to come and grab them. So we get a lot of birds brought into rehab in this country that have been gouged by racing pigeons, by hawks, because quite often they'll hit them in the air. Certainly a peregrine will hit them in the air. The bird will come down, but then something will happen where the pigeon gets away, but she's injured, and that's when they get brought in. The other thing that happens is that they just get really tired, and they're really hungry, and there is no food for them. Just like with the feral pigeons, we said earlier, the reason that they're on the town streets is because they're looking for food, because there's no natural food for them, because they're domestic birds. They're coming to people for food. Racing pigeons, even more so. A racing pigeon coming down in a race does not know where to get food from, and if they've gone for 600 miles by the time they've not eaten in that crate because they're stressed, they're going to be extremely hungry. So they come down looking for food. They get predated by cats, they get predated by foxes, they get kicked by people, they belt into cars, and they also hit windows, especially office buildings, because they can't see glass. They can't see glass at all. There is a special type of glass that they are using in some office buildings now to help with birds, but not very many people are adopting it. So any big panes of glass, a pigeon is just not going to see it, and they just knock themselves unconscious, unfortunately, and fall to the ground, quite often with clavicle injuries or broken wings. And then by the time they're on the ground, if they're not picked up by somebody kind and taken to a sanctuary, then basically they're going to get eaten by a dog or a cat or a fox, or abused by a person. So they really, really suffer. They suffer in the races. And when we speak to people that race pigeons, they'll say, no, we love our birds and we always want them home. Which brings me on to the next thing. So racing pigeons, let's say a pigeon comes down in a race and they are lucky enough to be picked up by one of us who's going to care for them, one of you, or just somebody out in the street that thinks, well, this isn't a normal feral pigeon, she needs to go somewhere. They've got little bands on their legs, and those bands will have a specific number on them that traces them back to the Racing Pigeon Association, so they know who owns the bird, and sometimes they'll have a telephone number stamped on their wing. In all my years with pigeons, having racers come in, 80% of the time when we made the call to those people, to the owners, the people that have bred these birds, that look after the birds, 80% of the time they will say, don't worry, you can keep the bird, they make good pets, or we don't really want a home, you can just break a neck. There's no law against that. That's perfectly legal. If they abandon their birds and they don't want them back, they get a rap on the knuckles, apparently, from the Racing Pigeon Association, and that's it. They don't get banned from racing, and the RSPCA, it doesn't come under any law. The RSPCA have nothing to say about it. And breaking a pigeon's neck is the RSPCA approved way of killing a pigeon in this country still, to this day, which blows my mind. And that's domestic birds and wild birds as well. It's absolutely abhorrent, and that's how we treat them. The problem with pigeons, really, with the law in this country is they fall between the gaps. Because they are seen as wild birds, the RSPCA don't want to have anything to do with them. And then because there are racing pigeons, nobody really knows the difference unless they're a rehabber. and then they fall between the gaps because then nobody wants to take responsibility for them as far as the Countryside and Wild Bird Act. So they fall between the gap every single time, and there's no care for them, and that's where we come in, basically. So that's racing, that's pigeon racing. And that method is called widowhood. It's very well known. There are special types of food that are produced specifically for widowhood racing. But when we publicly ask pigeon racers about it, they will deny all knowledge of it and say that isn't what they do because they know it's cruel. We've also got another form of racing that has become quite popular in this country. Sorry, I'm just looking for the time. Am I all right for time, Brian? Yeah. Yeah, it's just coming to past, I think.
Yeah.
There is another form of racing. Yeah, brilliant, thank you. That is becoming more popular in this country and all over the world. And that's called one loft racing. And the reason why that's becoming more popular, as you can imagine, like everything, is because it costs less to do, but the prizes are bigger. So what happens with one loft is, just for a moment, imagine I'm going to race pigeons. Obviously, I would never do that, but I'm going to breed some pigeons to race. So I'm going to breed 5 pigeons. And I'm going to let them pair up, and I'm going to go through the whole widowhood thing. And then I end up with more pigeons. Or I'm just going to breed 5, and I'm going to wait until they're about 6 or 7 weeks old. I'm not going to let them see another pigeon because they don't need to. I'm not going to let them pair up. And I'm going to send the pigeon that I think has the best wings and the best strength and will win at a race. I'm going to send that one pigeon off to a one loft. And the one loft is, I don't know, 100 miles down the road. And this guy out there who's doing the one loft racing, he's got 10,000 pigeons in his loft, all from different people. So I'm left with 4 pigeons that I'm not going to use. So I break all their necks because we don't need them now. And that one pigeon that I hope is going to be a winner goes to the one loft. He does exactly the same as you heard before. He takes them on a lorry, he takes them abroad, takes them wherever he wants for the races. If that bird wins a race, we split the money. And that's a lot of money. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of pounds in prizes in these races. It's incredibly cruel. And certainly in races abroad where they do one loft, they will be releasing these birds from tankers, from huge ships in the middle of the ocean. And they release 30,000 birds at a time. And the majority of the birds, around about 90%, will drown in that race. They don't even make it to land because of the conditions, because they don't know what the sea is. So they come down and then they get caught in the waves and they drown because they're tired and they don't know where they are, and there is no land to rest on. And there are many, many documented videos online now, many of which we share, that show birds being released from these ships, flying around in the sky, not knowing where the land is. They come and land back on the ship. And it's someone's job to go around with a stick and knock them all off the side of the ship to get them back in the air. It's incredibly cruel, absolutely incredibly cruel. And you see on these videos, the sea's just full of bodies bobbing about. And again, it's not against the law. That's perfectly legal. And it's not being talked about because they're pigeons and nobody really cares about them. And that's what I'm out here trying to change. So there are 2 different associations that I run. Little Green Pigeon, we fundraise, we sell merchandise like this. We sell high quality merchandise and we fundraise and we accept donations. And that money gets converted into pigeon food, into high-vis vests for people that are out there trying to get them off buildings when they're injured. It gets converted into medication and it gets converted into veterinary fees, rather to pay veterinary fees for people who are rehabbing pigeons in this country. And it sounds really dark and it sounds really sad. And I sound like I'm the only one doing this, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I might be the only person speaking out in a huge way in this way, but there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that are out there picking these birds up and looking after these birds, and they really need your help. They really, really need our help as well. And the reason for that is there are many, many vegan sanctuaries for farmed animals in this country doing incredible work. You know, I've been to loads of them. They do fantastic work and we need them. It's really important that they're well funded. But there are thousands and thousands of people in this country looking after birds of all sorts, but particularly pigeons, and they're not funded because nobody knows about it. And because You can visit a farm animal sanctuary and you can see the pigs and you can see the chickens and you can see they're being well looked after and they've got long lives and they need to be fed and watered and looked after. So we'll donate our money to that, which is amazing. It needs to happen. But because with pigeons it's hidden, because there are very few pigeon sanctuaries, nobody sees them. These people are working 40 hours, 50 hours a week, and the majority of their wages are going on these birds, and they've got pigeons in their bathrooms, in their bedrooms, in their offices. These birds are everywhere in cages just trying to get better so they can be re-released or go to the very few sanctuaries that we have in this country. It's really well hidden, and that's what we are trying to speak out on, to show people what needs to be done and that we need funding. So that's why I go around the country talking and doing things like this. And that's why I'm so grateful for Brian and you all having me here tonight. It's to explain to you that there is a crisis out there. These people really need our help. And the birds really, really need our help. In January of this year, I set up the National Pigeon Advocacy Association. And that has a slightly different job to Little Green Pigeon. Although we do want to help people that are looking after birds, the main job for the National Pigeon Advocacy Association is to train people to look after these birds. So we're an educational association. We held our first conference in September this year. It was really well attended. I was absolutely delighted. We had 130 people and it was a vegan-led conference, a veterinary-led as well. I honestly, when I thought about setting up the conference in January, I thought we'd maybe have 10 people. And we had 130 people buy tickets and come over. They came from Australia, they came from America, they came from Tokyo, somebody came over from the Netherlands. We had loads of people there from all over the world. It's really, really, really needed, this education. And some of the vets and the veterinary nurses and the wildlife rehabbers that came to talk were there, that leading the way in the field for pigeons. They were absolutely incredible people. We've got another event this October, next October. I'm ahead of myself there, next year, and it's a 2-day event this year. So, and we're hoping, we've got 400 tickets available for that. So we're hoping to sell out that as well. And that just proves that there is an interest out there, and it also proves just how much education we need. So people can help these birds more and more. So what I'd like you to do today, if you can, is remember a couple of things from this conversation. The one is, next time you're in a town and you see the pigeons, if you see somebody abusing them, if you see somebody kicking them, if you see somebody just generally being horrible to them, please, if you're safe and if you can, just go up and tell them a few facts about the pigeons. Tell them why they're there. Tell them that those birds are there because we abandoned them. That's why they're there. They're domestic birds. I like to use the term that they're like puppies, because then that really gets into people's minds. And when they see them and they say, they're domestic just like a dog is. This is like breeding dogs and then letting them out on the street. We wouldn't let that happen, not in the UK. But that's exactly what's happened with these birds. They are our street dogs, basically. So if you do have that opportunity, talk to people. They'll be receptive. And the other reason why I think it's important to talk to people about pigeons is because I actually genuinely believe they are the key to veganism, because they're everywhere. When you talk to young people who live in cities who aren't having the ability to go out into the countryside and see nature, not cattle, but nature, wild birds, wild animals, the otters that we hardly see anymore, there's that disconnection. It's just terrifying. But a pigeon, albeit a domestic bird, that pigeon can show them how beautiful a bird can be and why we need to look after them. And they are basically, to some people, the only wildlife that they're going to see. And I think that's a really good way of connecting people with veganism, with compassion. So if you can talk to people about pigeons next time you're out, please do so. Also, if you could pay a visit to our website and sign up to our mailing list. One of the things that we are trying to do, Little Green Pigeon this is to get pigeon racing banned. We face a huge struggle because, as I said at the start of this, people think pigeon racing is old men with lofts. And to an extent that still goes on. But with one loft racing and with the younger generation coming up, there is serious money involved in pigeon racing and we are really struggling. We haven't even started a petition for a ban yet because we're facing so much backlash. This week, I've received another viable death threat, me personally. The police are involved and they're taking it seriously. These people mean business. This was a serious threat. Luckily, no one knows where I live and I never give out my address, and that's the reason for it. This is the third threat I've had in the last 3 years. They want me to shut up. They're trying to silence me. We have a team now. It used to be just me. We now have a team, and we're trying to make our social media presence and our website slightly more anonymous. But that's going to take time because people know my face. And yes, I make it worse by coming and doing talks at events. I don't just do vegan events, but that's because I won't shut up about it. It's too important. And I'm not the criminal here. The people giving me these threats are. But the point is, they mean business. So we are having a petition next year that's going to go forward. If you could join our mailing list at littlegreenpigeon.co.uk, it would mean the world to me, because the more people we have on that mailing list, the more people I can talk to about pigeons, and the more people that can join that petition, the better chance we've got of getting a ban in place. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you ever so much, Sue. Let me just add my spotlight again. Thank you. That's very enlightening. I mean, there's various things. Sue knows, some of you may not know, I used to be involved in the Save the Trafalgar Square Pigeon group, but there's a lot of stuff there that I didn't actually know. And I think pigeons have bad press, and I was wondering why particularly. And I think you alluded to something. You said something. Is that the I'm trying to think which ones they were. The feral pigeons, I think, primarily. I mean, they walk rather than fly, and just as it's like if you have a load of dogs in a park, what do they walk and they defecate? And I think the problem is that when you have a congregation of birds, it's going to be the same, particularly in one location. And I think that's been the challenge for the feral pigeons, particularly because you don't hear anybody saying, "Oh, we've got too many robins or blackbirds." I mean, nobody mentions any of the other birds, which are many of. It's always the pigeons that get the bad press, unfortunately. If anybody has
that, you just spot on.
Yeah.
And part of the reason for that as well is because we mentioned earlier, there's no natural food for a pigeon in this country because they're grainivores. There's no food for them in the streets. That's why they're coming to look for people, because they can't get their own food. They congregate where humans are. So they're walking through human detritus. They're walking through our hair, and it gets wrapped around their feet, and that's why their feet are in such bad condition. But also, they're eating Greggs sausage rolls, aren't they? Let's face it, there's still not enough food. They're eating all the crap that's left behind. So then they get diarrhea, and that's why there is more poop. One good fact for you in the poo conversation is that pigeons get the blame for pooing on cars. That's quite a common thing. Now, if your car is parked under like a telegraph pole wire, electricity wire or a telephone wire, then maybe it is going to be pigeons. But it's actually also going to more likely to be crows or the robins that you mentioned. And they actually do a bigger splat than a pigeon generally. And there's a reason for that. And that is that unless you're parked directly underneath a pigeon, pigeons can't poo when they fly. And that's because of the articulation of their legs. So they, as they fly, their legs go backwards and it covers their vent that they defecate from, and they don't poo because of that. Otherwise they get it on their legs. Whereas a crow or a magpie or a blackbird, they don't do that in the same way. So they poo while they're flying. But pigeons still absolutely get the rap for pooing everywhere.
Yeah. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, you can either raise your hand and unmute or post in the chat box. I know Hazel was asking, I know what the answer is going to be. It says, when I find an injured pigeon, for example, a broken claw, is it best to take them to a wildlife charity? She said, I once went to a vet, but they were not very kind.
Yeah, so this is a problem. And this is what the NPAA is set up to do. So when I said Little Green Pigeon is kind of fundraising NPAA's education, one of the other things that we're trying to do with the National Pigeon Advocacy Association is to set up a network of pigeon rehabbers throughout the UK, because there just isn't one. There are thousands of people out there, but trying to find one is extremely difficult. So what I would say is, at the moment, all you can do is get in touch with us, or get in touch, with Little Green Pigeon or the NPAA. There is a good website called helpwildlife.co.uk. And that's a really good place for any wildlife resource. That's what that app is set up. The website's set up by a really good, a kind vegan lady called Sarah. It isn't specifically for pigeons. It's also for hedgehogs and bats and everything else. You will still struggle, depending on where you are, to find someone that looks after pigeons directly. But what you might find is a local wildlife rehabber on there that will know somebody that looks after pigeons, basically. The reason why it's difficult, the part of the reason why it's difficult to find someone that looks after pigeons is because many people that look after them are doing so inside their own homes, and their neighbours will complain about that. The council, if you're living in a council or a rented property, your landlord will complain about that. And I understand why. But that's why they don't advertise their services as such, is because, you know, so it's really, really difficult. You tend to have to know somebody. The problem with veterinary practices, and again, this is something we're working on, is that there is no training whatsoever. So when I used to work in veterinary practice, I had no training whatsoever on wildlife, and certainly not on pigeons. And before I looked after pigeons, if one came in, and I remember doing this on countless occasions, a pigeon was brought to me as an anaesthetist at the back of the practice, and they would say, this pigeon's poorly, she needs putting to sleep. And I didn't even question it. I just took the bird, gave the pentobarbital, and off into the freezer. And that still happens now. It's dreadful. It's absolutely dreadful. And I didn't know any better, because that's what I was taught by the Royal College. There's a huge disconnect. As we know, there's a huge disconnect, full stop, with wildlife, but in veterinary practice, there's a huge disconnect as well. It's terrifying. So yeah, unfortunately, a lot of the vets just won't see them. So part of what we're doing is we have a new campaign called Gracie's Box. That's named after a bird that we had in our sanctuary that now lives somewhere else. And Gracie's Box is a big plastic box that's been developed at the moment, and that's got everything that a veterinary practice will need to look after a pigeon for a couple of days, including information sheets, links to videos online that they can watch on how to crop feed and how to look after them, what medication they should use, because they won't know what pain relief to use. They won't know the dosage. It's just it's in the veterinary formulas, but it's really hard to find. And they won't know the common illnesses like canker and PMV that pigeons get. But they also won't know when to give them a chance. They won't know about warming them up and you know, giving them a chance. So that's what we're trying to do, is have boxes so they've got all the equipment they need in there, but they've also got an educational leaflet in there with links, and that's what we're looking for funding for as well at the moment, is for Gracie's Boxes. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot to do.
Thanks, Sue.
We'll get there.
A few questions. Tatiana, hi there, welcome.
Hi, do you hear me normally? I just wanted to say hello to Susan also, and it was a really nice conference presentation, and I really like how you're so passionate about it. It was really not boring, or you know, I heard it already. It was really, really good.
That's really kind.
And I really learned a lot of things, because usually I have never attended this kind of presentation about pigeons. It's really rare. So I didn't know anything about these races. And I just remembered that I used to know one girl when I was much younger, and we went together to university, and we were talking something about the city, and she mentioned like, oh, I hate pigeons. They're like flying rats. And I think this was like the worst comment I ever heard about pigeons. And it was so like, what? Yeah, unfortunately, there is a lot of this opinion, like they're not even treated like birds, you know, like they would see the other birds, any other. This is like pigeons, as if there are some kind of things. Yeah, so I'm not surprised that all that is legal, and yeah, especially about pigeons.
Yeah, and well, I can tell you how often we hear the flying rats things. The jumper, this is one of the jumpers we sell. This jumper's got on it a rat and a pigeon, because that's what we get told all the time. So on a lot of our merch, we have rats as well. And we're not a rat advocacy association, but they get lumped in so often as flying rats. Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's terrible the way that they're treated, and the way they're vilified and seen as dirty. The dirty thing, actually, if you'll indulge me for a moment in a little story, comes from the 1940s, 1950s. In America, there was an outbreak of, oh, now my brain's gone, I think it was Legionnaire's disease, and in New York, and they blamed it on the local pigeon flock. They said that the local pigeon flock had been defecated near a school or near a hospital, and it had caused this outbreak. And then there was, very close after that, there was an outbreak of meningitis, and they blamed that on pigeons as well. And they've now since found out that it was nothing to do with pigeons. Actually, they've traced it somehow and worked out what had happened, and they know it was nothing to do. But the damage is done then, isn't it? It's, you know, that the whole dirty pigeon, you know, is already there. So yeah, and thank you, and yeah, that's why I'm kind of out here doing this. It was a really difficult decision to give up my sanctuary, because I loved running the sanctuary, and I felt like I was doing really good work, and I had done for years, but I think there's just so much work to do. And because people aren't speaking out for pigeons, and because I'm quite chatty, as you may have gathered, I was quite happy to go out and do that. And it just needs somebody to go out and do it. This week, I've got somebody's volunteering with me now, who's actually offered to go out and do public speaking she lives up in Scotland, and she's going to go out. She's a young lady, she's wonderful, obviously vegan. We only work with vegans, but she's going out to do some public speaking. So she's basically taking the talk that I normally do when I've got my background and I normally do this great big long talk. She's going to learn that talk and go out and do it. So it's incredible that we've got other people now that want to speak out. But part of the reason why there aren't many people doing that is because you just get so overwhelmed when you're rehabbing. You don't have time. You don't have time to actually advocate for them.
Thanks,
I
Sue.
also worked in, sorry, I just wanted to mention, you're talking about sanctuary. I also worked in a bird sanctuary. Maybe you know it, in Belgium. It's in the north, in the city called Oostende, and it's the only one in that area. It's actually the only one they have actually in Belgium that is just fully for birds, but there haven't been any pigeons. We never had pigeons because it's usually the birds that are brought to the center, all kind of birds migrating and so on, but pigeons really never, ever. Yeah.
No, and you raise a very good point. And the reason for that is, if you imagine you're in a railway station somewhere and you walk through a railway station and there's a crowd of people because their kingfisher is on the floor in the railway station, people are going to be taking pictures and worrying and, oh, isn't she beautiful? And we need to get her to a vet, or we need to get her some help because she's unusual and she's beautiful. There are pigeons on the floors and up on the sills in railway stations, thousands of them in every station you go to. You don't see crowds of people because they're just ignored, because they're dull little birds, or because of the dirty rhetoric, or just because we're so used to seeing them. They're just treated as objects, not as animals. So yeah, you're spot on with that. That's the reason why in some places you just don't get them brought into sanctuary. They just never make it there. They're left on the ground and they just die. It's really sad. Thank you so much.
Paul,
Thank you.
Paul Campbell. Hi,
hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan, for a very interesting talk. I'm in Galway on the west coast of Ireland, just on the Atlantic coast, and I was just thinking about it. And we used to have a lot of pigeons here in Galway, and they seem to be replaced by seagulls now. I presume we still have some pigeons around, but there's a lot of seagulls, and I'm just wondering, is it because the seagulls are coming that the pigeons are gone, or and why have the seagulls seem to have increased in population in the city area on the coast?
So, well, it's interesting that you're in Galway, because I tell you what, you do have over there. You have a lot of pigeon racers, because I'm basically opposite you. I'm on the Welsh coast, and we get an awful lot of pigeon racing pigeons here from Ireland that are brought over the channel and are released over here to come back to you guys. And a lot of them don't make it; they end up staying here. But your question really is feral pigeons in the towns. Why they would not be there? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe there's a lot of cities now and a lot of town councils now are banning feeding the pigeons. So that could be why you're seeing a reduction in numbers. And it could also just be to ill health. If the flock has got paramyxovirus, or the flock there has become ill and nobody's treating them, nobody's looking after them, that could be why. It's interesting you're saying that the seagulls have increased as well, and I don't know, but you do raise a good question that seagulls will attack and kill pigeons, and they'll actually eat pigeons. So it could well be just that the seagulls are coming more and more inland because there aren't as many fish for them outside, and because they've got addicted to the chips and the ice cream that they're eating, and that they're working on that now. I'm seeing I've got a friend who works in ornithology, and they're doing studies on this now, and they think that there's kind of an addiction now with seagulls to human food, so they're coming more and more inland for their easy fix of sort of fatty, salty food. but that's encouraging them more and more inland, and it could well be that. It could just be then that they're eating the baby pigeons. That does happen, which is really sad. But yeah, it could be what's happening.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah,
Ryan,
thank you.
Ryan, you're right to unmute yourself. Hi there. Hi, Ryan.
Can you hear me there?
Yes, I can.
Hi, sorry. This is my first time using Zoom. I have no idea what I'm doing, so apologies. I just wanted to say thank you for the talk. Honestly, I've learned so much. I've never knew any of the information that was said. Even something as basic as people eating them, I just had no idea. Just a quick question, really. I don't know if you've maybe done it in the past, but there's a vegan camp out. I think that would be a really good talk, and a lot of people would have a lot of interest in what you have to say around the topic. If you've done it, or if it's something that you're thinking about or possibly interested in doing. And again, just another basic question, really, I guess. What would be the best thing to feed them? Because I've got a nice little park spot and there's hundreds of pigeons, and yeah, I would like to feed them, but the correct thing, really.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Well, the first thing about Vegan Camp Out. So, vegan, I don't know if any of you guys know the guys who run Vegan Camp Out. They're great, but they're really hard to get hold of. So we've been on the list for Vegan Camp Out for the last 4 years. And this year we managed to get a stand at Vegan Camp Out, and it was absolutely brutal, but incredible. We had quite a big stand. I had laryngitis at the end of Camp Out because I think I must have told the story of pigeon racing to about 4,000 people. It was incredible. And we have applied as a speaker. Yeah, unfortunately with Camp Out, sometimes they charge you to speak. So as a small grassroots association, I haven't got the money to pay them to allow me to speak there, but I'm working on them. But I would really like to speak at Camp Out. I do speak at all the veg fests. Tim Barford's an absolute angel. He lets me speak at all the veg fests. I spoke at Vegan Life Live. I run 2 festivals as well. I run the Great Vegan Gathering and I run Veg Out West, and I speak at those as well because I can do, because they're my festivals. So yeah, I do as much as I can. I do speak as much as I can, and it's really important. And this is the same story that I'm sort of telling. So yeah, and thank you for your comments. That's really kind. And yeah, I would love to speak at Camp Out. If you can, I've got the guy's email address and I have emailed him, but I haven't heard back. But it would be good because this is the audience we need to get to. Is if we can get the vegans on board first, then we can work on everyone else. And as you say, even within our sector, it's just not known. So yeah, thank you. The second question was about. Sorry.
I've been vegan 10 years and there's just so much information that I just didn't know. So I'm sure there's a lot of people in the same boat as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're spot on. Absolutely. It's just really well hidden. It's really well hidden. Yeah, it's just, yeah, now you know it. If you start Googling it or you go on any of our socials, you'll see it and you'll just be like, goodness me, it's a whole thing. Like they are. It's a huge thing. I mean, just to give you an example of the money involved, a cock sold 2 years ago in China for £1.2 million. That's one bird.
Oh, wow.
And that was a winner of one of these horrendous, they call it the death race, one of these horrendous races. But because he'd won, they then bred from her, and he would have bred hundreds of birds. But yeah, he sold for £1 million, 1.2 million. It's just insane amounts of money. Ryan's second question was what to feed them. So basically any form of good quality pigeon food is really, really good. You can feed peanuts as long as they're bird peanuts, not human peanuts. And you can feed sunflower hearts. Don't feed the sunflowers with the casing on, the black sunflower seeds, because they struggle with the casing. They can get stuck in the crop. But sunflower hearts, which are the little silver ones, they'll go wild for them. They absolutely love them. But what will also happen then is, because they're so full of sunflower oil, they love them and they'll overeat. So ideally, if you can get hold of a pigeon food, so Bamford's is one manufacturer, I think Johnson & Jeff is another manufacturer. You can get them on, I don't know if anybody uses Amazon, but you can get them on Amazon. But you can also get them in some pet shops. You can ask them to order them in. And we're actually starting to try and stock them on our website so that we can sell them at a much lower rate for people that go out and feed on the streets. So if you get in touch with me when that all launches, which should be in about 3 months' time, what we're trying to do, because we already buy for the sanctuaries that we fund, we already buy like 500 kilos at a time of this food, so that couple of £1,000 worth of food at a time, and that gets sent out to the sanctuaries. We're going to try and hold a stock of that somewhere and send that out to people who feed in the towns. So yeah, sorry, that's my dog waking up in the background. Yeah, so just a good quality sort of pigeon food would be ideal.
Great, thanks for that. Margaret, hi Margaret.
Thanks,
yes, hey, hi, thank you so much for the talk. I'm in New York City. I'm a pigeon lover, and I feed about between 800 and 1,000 pigeons every day, and they love me. They wait for me, so it's a very big commitment and obligation.
Yeah.
And as you might guess, I have a lot of enemies. I have many enemies. I've been attacked for my feeding of the pigeons, but we're very fortunate here to have a place called the Wild Bird Fund. You may be familiar with it. It's the only place in the city that will take in injured, sick pigeons. And so I spend about half my life going back and forth between the Wild Bird Fund, because we have a lot of string feet and just everything, neglect and starvation and dehydration and you name it. I admire the way you approach people with compassion. I'm working on that. I'm not so great at it. We have a lot of kids here who think it's great fun to just run through pigeons. I'll be feeding them and the kids just go charging through them, and the parents think, oh, how cute that is that. But I inform them that they are not cute. They are not cute. Their parents may think they're cute, but they are not cute. They are cruel. But what would you say would be, I mean, you did offer up some explanations to approach to people. I would love for you to give me something. I am trying to be more compassionate. It's an ongoing struggle, but like, what would you say, for instance, to kids like that?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for looking after that many pigeons. I know you have huge flocks out there in New York. I don't know if you know of Tina Pina, who.
Oh yes,
yeah.
She's a very,
so I know
very,
Tina, yeah, and we do quite a lot
friend.
online together. She's lovely. So yeah, for everybody that doesn't know Tina Pina, she is out there advocating for pigeons. She dresses like a pigeon. She's exquisite dresses, and she makes all these little I don't know what she makes them out of, actually, like fabric pigeons, and she takes them out into New York and puts them on the street to sell them, to raise money for pigeon rehabbers, but also just to get people talking about them. So you've got some incredible advocates out there for pigeons.
Yes, we do.
And thank you so much, because I know you've got so many of them out there. And the hatred for them out there is exactly the same as it is here. According to Tina, it's and obviously you just mentioned that as well. It's horrendous. As far as you do me a great honour of saying that I'm compassionate. You haven't seen me out on the street talking to people that are kicking pigeons. I don't always hold back, but I think what I tend to do is shout to start off with to stop them doing it, and then just kind of try and explain to people that they're domestic. That's always the way I go, is that, because I think sometimes it depends on the age of the child, it depends whether there's parents there, but saying to them, you wouldn't like to be kicked, quite often you just get, well, whatever. But if you say to them, that these guys are just like dogs, and then try and explain that to them, that this is like a puppy, and that, they've just lost their home, and that's why they're living here. That's the only way you can do it. And I find that sometimes they'll listen and sometimes they won't. But I tend to try and look for the parents. If it's kids, I tend to try and, rather than speaking to the kids, tend to try and look for the parents, and then just go out and see if you can make some moves with them. It's not always easy. One of the things we're trying to do, we will be sending this, because I work with Palomacy in America, who's your big, basically they're a huge version of what we do over here. Palomacy are incredible. We're working with them, and we're working with two other flocks out there, one in San Diego and one in Chicago, with the information packs that we're trying to bring forward to get printed. We'll be sending them out to the States as well for Palomacy. So the idea is that if you are out there feeding pigeons, you've got some literature that you can give out to people to explain why the pigeons are there, so you don't have to just constantly tell people sort of verbally. And we're finding that that's working quite well over here. because you can give out a leaflet, it's got a diplomacy on it, or it's got the NPAA on it, and it just looks quite official, and you can explain to them then why it's really important that we look after the birds and why you're having to feed them. But yeah, that's the best I can give, really. The best advice I can give on that is just keep trying, and thank you for doing that.
Well, thank you, and I would like to spread your talk around. I'm not sure if Brian has this on Facebook.
It's going to be up on YouTube. I'll send you the link.
Oh, okay, great.
Great. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you.
Okay, Susan, are you okay for time? I've got another couple of questions that people have put their hands up. If you're okay, Hazel, do you want to unmute yourself?
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi, Susan. Hi. Thank you so much.
Hazel.
Further to my question about the vet and the wildlife charity, I just wanted to give you all a heartwarming story. I was in a park in North London, and there was this little girl and her friend, and they were like 7 years old, and they were actually telling the two, one was a brother and another little boy, to stop kicking the pigeons, and that they are, should care about them. And she was talking all about them, and she had a beautiful T-shirt on, this little girl. And I went up to her and I just said, thank you, you're wonderful, and I told her mum, and mum was like, not really bothered. But it was so lovely to see a child, who really, I think she'll become one of us one day. And as I said,
wonderful.
Her brothers were taking a little bit of notice, so that was lovely. So there are, we need people like that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we do. And you're spot on, and you're right, it's that connection, isn't it? Between, if you can, that little girl can see that those animals are, they deserve the dignity and the respect that we hopefully try and give to one another. And yeah, hopefully that will, like you say, carry forward to vegan values, hopefully.
Yeah. Yes, really good. And thank you so much for all the work you do.
Yeah.
I'll be in touch about the camp out, because I want to know how much there. I can maybe help you with the payment or something.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you. Yeah, that'd be brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Hazel. You've got another question, Paul Campbell. Actually, before that, just
yeah, I have.
I know. Just before, hold on, just a sec. I've got a message from the other Paul saying, "Have the League Against Cruel Sports offered any help, or don't they care?"
It's so at the moment we're working with I'm sure they do care, but yeah, I think that from the impression I get, it's just that they've got they're kind of still on into the fox hunting, trying to get that sorted at the moment. We've been quite well. I work alongside at the moment Protect the Wild, Animal Aid and Freedom for Animals, and we've all kind of been clubbing together recently. Basically I've only been doing this since January this year. So it was only November last year when my sanctuary closed, and because I was running such a big sanctuary pretty much on my own, my partner helps, and I've got a friend that used to help with the birds. Other than that, it was just me. And I ran the shop. I had a fundraising shop at the time. That's now closed, partly just because we weren't taking enough money, and partly because of these death threats. That I can't be in a shop all day doing that, but also because I'm doing more advocacy work, I need to be out. But yeah, I'm still very much in with my advocacy in infancy. Everything that I've done so far, I've done in the last, where are we now, November? So I've done in the last 11 months. It's been quite a year. So yeah, this time last year there was no none of this had happened at all. So I was going out and doing talks occasionally, but very, very small. We'd not done camp out. I was raising money through the website, which I still do. But the advocacy was much quieter because I was physically looking after hundreds and hundreds of birds every day. So yeah, League of Cruel Sports is somebody we absolutely want to work with. But yeah, as I say, for me, until last week it was just me. This week we've had 6 volunteers come forward, and I've got someone now working for us freelance. Fantastic. So I've got a little bit more time now. But yeah, absolutely, it's a good shout. There would be somebody that we would definitely want to work with.
Great, thanks for that. Paul Campbell. Yeah,
thanks for allowing me another question. By the way, we have a kind of camp out. It's on the same weekend as your one in England, mid-August. It's around Lisnavar House, which is like a 16th, 17th house.
What's the question, Paul?
Yeah, the question is, in Galway City, there's a couple of ladies, one lady in particular, and she's spreading oats, you know, lots and lots of oats all around the city. And it's become quite an issue here, particularly with the Galway City Council. I mean, maybe you're changing my mind on this, but like initially I kind of thought it was not a good thing, you know, because it's, you know, like, and I'm not sure whether pigeons or whether, I don't know whether seagulls eat oats, and seagulls have become a bit of an issue here, you know. But so is spreading oats around the city all over the place a good idea? Because it really is. She's doing it almost full time, you know.
Okay, thanks.
I wouldn't have thought so. Oats are certainly not. I mean, pigeons will eat oats, but there are far better ways to feed them. So I'm not sure why she's doing that, unless she just doesn't really. Maybe she's not, as you say, maybe she's not trying to feed the pigeons directly. Most animals can eat oats, so maybe that's why she's, you know, she's spreading oats. But yeah, I wouldn't have thought that'd be an ideal situation, especially because as soon as they get damp, they get quite claggy, and that's not good for any animal, really. So yeah, it's difficult.
Thanks for that. Lan, do you want to unmute yourself? See if you can unmute. I think it was a microphone issue before. No, I think it may still have an issue. I'm just going to wind up, I think, at that point. Thank you ever so much for speaking to us, Sue. It's been it's really enlightening. I said there's only perhaps a half of what you said I knew. But yeah, there's a amount of cruelty out there. And to support Sue's organisations, I said, if you're watching this video, the links will be below the video. Sue, just remind us again, there's a Little Green Pigeon.
Green Pigeon, yeah, and the National Pigeon Advocacy Association, which I know is a bit of a mouthful, but I did that on purpose because of the Pigeon Racers Association is called the National Pigeon Association, so I just did that to piss them off, basically. Yeah, NPAA and Little Green Pigeon. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could all join me.
Thank you all for your time.
Round of applause for Sue. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sue.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
Thank you.